Some say the swamp hums when it's hungry. Others say it's just the ghosts singing to keep from sinking. Silas Piper doesn't believe either. Not anymore. Welcome to Tongue of the Serpent, a Southern Gothic horror podcast where bargains echo and every song costs something. Tonight's story is The Witch Who Ate the Bells. Silas has returned from the dark between worlds, but the music that came back with him won't let go. And when a witch on the bayou offers to quiet the hunger in his bones, he'll have to decide which silence he can live with. The Witch Who Ate the Bells. The crew of the Morning Star was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt like the shop was listening. A single oil lamp burned behind the counter, throwing long shadows across glass cases, filled with things no sane person would own. The scent of candle smoke and old paper clung to the air, threaded with the faint metallic tang of something unseen. Evelyn leaned on the counter, chin in her hand, eyes distant. She watched the lamp flame waver in the draft and let the guilt that had been gnawing at her settle in her chest like a stone. "I shouldn't have let him go," she said at last, voice barely above a whisper. Lucien Devereaux looked up from the ledger he'd been pretending to read. One ginger eyebrow arched.
"Silas."
She nodded. "He wanted to keep his music. I told him to answer. I thought—" Her voice faltered, and she stared at her own reflection in the glass case, a ghost between the shelves of cursed things. "I thought it was the only way to keep him whole, but I still hear it sometimes. The hum, like the bells are ringing in my dreams, and I wonder if I sent him into something worse than death." Lucien Devereaux closed the ledger with a soft thunk, his expression unreadable.
"He came back,"
he said simply. Her head lifted, hope flickering. "And now?" Lucien leaned back in his chair. Smoke curled from the cigarette he hadn't lit, an old habit more than a need.
"Gone. Slipped out of New Orleans one night, and the city hasn't whispered his name since."
The words hung between them, like the last toll of a bell. Evelyn looked down, fingers tracing idle circles on the counter's dusty surface. "Do you think the bells are done with him?" Lucien's eyes were distant now, reflecting the lamp flame in two cold points of light.
"The bells don't get done,"
he murmured. Somewhere in the rafters, a draft sighed through the wood, and for just a heartbeat, both of them thought they heard a faint, hollow chime. Evelyn shivered and said nothing more. The humming man. The fishing camp leaned over the water, like it had grown tired of holding itself together. Its pilings were chewed soft by time and tide, and every step across the warped planks produced a whispery groan, as if the whole place were considering giving up and sinking into the bayou. Cypress knees jutted from the dark water like the fingers of something long drowned and reaching. Silas Piper sat at the edge of the rickety dock, boots almost touching the black surface. He was all long limbs and quiet slouch, dressed in a soft weathered gray hoodie and loose joggers that hung comfortably on his frame, clothes that seemed to match the gray sky and the faded wood beneath him. His curls caught the last light of the day, and his dark eyes carried the distant, restless shine of someone who'd seen more than the world had any right to show him. The air was thick with mosquitoes and the sweet rot of wet leaves, the kind of humidity that makes your skin feel like it belongs to the swamp more than it belongs to you. Somewhere out in the dark, a frog croaked once and then thought better of it. He plucked a chord, and there it was, that other voice. The note left his guitar trailing a low, thrumming resonance, a sound that seemed to come from under his skin instead of the strings. The water rippled with invisible chords. Fish scattered like startled thoughts. Dragonflies hovered mid-flight, uncertain whether to applaud or flee. Silas closed his eyes and let the chord fade. He'd walked through hell to keep this music, waded through the ringing jaws of the hungry bells, and come back different, a little less whole, a little more hollow. He'd traded safety, maybe sanity, and some unspoken piece of himself he couldn't name. And for what? To sit on a rotting dock in the middle of nowhere, playing for a swamp that didn't clap. The resonance pulsed in his bones, soft as a heartbeat, and the frogs stayed silent. His music belonged to him now, only to him. The swamp speaks first. Evening seeped into the bayou like ink and water, slow and patient, curling around cypress trunks and the best skeleton of the old fishing camp. The world remembered itself alive. Frogs croaked out their crooked rhythm. Cicadas rattled like dry bones in a storyteller's hand, and something unseen cut a line across the black water with a sound like an exhale. Silas sat with his guitar across his lap, playing to the dusk, when he heard it, another hum. Not the ominous resonance that had followed him since the hungry bells. Not the usual frog or insect chorus. Something new. It slid between the notes, threading itself into his chest like a soft answering call. His resonance, but gentler, like someone humming along with him, somewhere just out of sight. He rose, barefoot, leaving the guitar behind on the deck. The boards sighed as he stepped into the wet, soft earth. Mud wrapped his toes and sucked at his heels, cool and slick, smelling of old secrets and river coins. Cypress knees jutted like the spines of slumbering beasts, and Spanish moss swayed in whispers of wind that didn't quite touch him. Then came the laugh, low, rich, patient, as though the swamp itself had been waiting to speak. Silas froze, scanning the dim shapes of the trees, and there she was, the swamp witch. She sat on the branch of a cypress as naturally as a heron, as if the tree had grown her there. Her hair was tangled with moss and threaded with bits of shell and bone, glinting pale in the last scraps of light. Her skin had the warmth of river mud, and her dress shimmered like night water, black at first glance, but alive with hidden reflections if you looked too long. Bare feet dangled from the branch, and her eyes held the knowing glint of a predator that was not, at this moment, hungry.
Well, look at you, ringing a dinner bell for things that ought not to come to dinner,
she said, her voice smooth as riverbed gravel. The frogs fell silent. The whole swamp leaned in, listening. The offer. Silas stood ankle deep in the mud, staring up at the witch as twilight bruised the edges of the sky. Fireflies flickered between the cypress trees, drifting like someone had shaken a jewelry box of small, living stars. The bayou was a mirror for the sky now, dark and crooked, the moon breaking into ripples whenever something unseen moved beneath the surface. The woman tilted her head, listening in a way that made Silas feel like she could hear more than the frogs and crickets, like she could hear the marrow in his bones.
"You've got the bells in you,"
she said finally, her voice soft and steady, as if commenting on the weather.
"Faint and far, like someone calling your name from the bottom of a lake. They're still listening. They always listen."
Silas swallowed, throat dry.
"And you? What? Know how to stop them?"
She smiled, showing too few or too many teeth.
The swamp knows how to hum too. Older than the bells in its own slow way. I can teach you to bend your noise into ours. Let the frogs eat the bells. Let the trees drink them. The swamp can hide you.
He squinted, suspicious.
"And what's that gonna cost me? My soul?"
The witch laughed, the sound low and rich, curling through the branches like smoke.
If I wanted your soul, I'd just wait. The bells would gift wrap it eventually and leave it on my doorstep. No, this is an arrangement. I help you, and the swamp gets a song or two in return.
Silas hesitated, weighing her words against the steady hum in his chest. A part of him wanted to laugh and walk away. Another part, the part that heard his own name in distant tolls and dreamed of drowning in sound, said yes before his mouth did.
"Fine.
He muttered.
I'll try it your way."
Her eyes glimmered, pleased.
Good. Bring your guitar deeper into the swamp after full dark. The frogs will tell me you're coming, and we're nothing you're afraid to ruin. The mud don't forgive pride.
As she spoke, the last light slipped from the horizon. The fireflies swirled like someone had stirred the night with a finger, and the water caught the moon in a trembling reflection, a second crooked sky. Silas shivered and thought, for the first time in a long time, that maybe his music wasn't lost, just waiting for the right audience. The lesson: singing in the swamp. The swamp witch led Silas along a path that wasn't a path, winding between cypress roots and through curtains of Spanish moss that brushed his shoulders like sleepy ghosts. The bayou at night was a cathedral alive with quiet hymns, frog choirs, the soft applause of distant wings, the occasional splash of something surfacing to see what had wandered into its church. They reached a clearing where the water widened into a hollow, an amphitheater carved by time and tide. Bent cypress trees leaned together, their roots knotted into benches for unseen congregants. The surface of the water reflected the moon like a crooked silver mirror. Fireflies drifted over it in lazy spirals, their light trembling in time with the distant pulse in Silas's chest. The witch stopped at the water's edge and gestured with a hand that gleamed with a river-wet skin.
Here,
She said,
the swamp hears everything here. Play, but don't play for yourself. Play for the frogs, the owls, the alligators. Play for the water. Play for the things that remember this place better than you do.
Silas hesitated, then settled onto a dry root and lifted his guitar. He plucked a tentative chord. The swamp recoiled. The frogs went silent. The fireflies scattered. A ripple spread across the water, shivering like something trying to shake him off.
Not like that.
The witch said gently, Her own voice slid into a hum, low and earthy, threading itself through the rustle of leaves and the night's insects. The swamp leaned toward her sound, like a dog toward its master. Silas closed his eyes. He listened. He let the frogs find the downbeat, the cicadas take the high notes, the wind whisper in harmony. He softened his fingers. He let his hum thread into theirs, letting the swamp teach him the song it had been singing long before he arrived. The change was subtle, but real. His resonance, the dangerous undertone of the hungry bells, shifted. Less a warning now, more a heartbeat folded into the rhythm of the night. Fireflies drifted closer, orbiting him in a slow dance before arranging themselves into the shape of a treble clef above his head. A heron, standing in the shallows, watched solemnly, then dipped its head in approval, like a jury foreman returning the verdict. And above them all, the moon seemed to hold its breath, to listen. The last chord faded into the night, soft as mist, and the swamp held it like a secret. The water in the hollow rippled, not with wind, but with sound, each vibration spreading in perfect circles until it seemed the whole bayou was breathing with his music. Fireflies hung still in the air, caught mid-drift, and the moonlight shivered across the black surface, like a silver string plucked once and left to tremble. The witch crouched at the edge of the hollow. Her dress darkened as it kissed the damp mud, and she leaned forward with a slow, deliberate grace, as if the swamp itself had to grant her permission. She dipped both hands into the water, and when she raised them, the ripples clung to her palms, trembling in rhythm with the last hum in Silas's chest. She lifted the water to her mouth and drank. For a heartbeat, Silas swore he heard the hungry bells ringing in her throat, muffled and distant, like the memory of a church underwater. His own bones seemed to answer, the old resonance tugging, uncertain, before settling into silence. The frogs began to sing again, soft and crooked. A single owl hooted, approving or indifferent. It was hard to tell. The witch licked the last drop from her thumb and smirked.
They taste like brass and rain, and they won't be calling you tonight,
she said. Silas exhaled, a shiver leaving him like smoke. His chest felt lighter, his music less like a burden, and more like something alive again. The witch leaned back on her heels, river water dripping from her fingers into the mud.
They'll listen again. Bells are patient, but so is the swamp. Keep playing for it, and it will keep you hidden,
she said. In the distance, a heron took wing, its long shadow rippling across the moonlit water. Silas thought, just for a moment, that he saw the faintest flicker of light sink beneath the surface, like a swallowed song, and the swamp's heartbeat took it in as its own. Resolution, a new kind of audience. Silas made his way back through the bayou, following the path the witch had taken him along, or perhaps one the swamp made for him. Just this once. The moss brushed his shoulders with damp fingers, and the mud gave way under his feet, like it had accepted him as part of its quiet, soft-bellied family. Behind him, the hollow, in the water, whispered with the memory of his music, as if the trees themselves were humming a lullaby he'd left behind. When he stepped onto the deck, the boards groaned their welcome, and the camp exhaled the way an old dog sighs when its master comes home. The world was wet and gleaming, all silver from the moon and gold from the fireflies. He picked up his guitar. The first note bloomed into the air, and for the first time in months, the frogs didn't fall silent. They kept singing, joyfully off-key. Cicadas rattled their approval. Somewhere in the dark, a gator slid into the water with a splash, like punctuation. Even the dragonflies lingered, glinting like misplaced stars. Silas let his fingers wander across the strings, soft and careful. His music no longer fought the world. It drifted into it, became part of the crooked symphony that had been playing long before he arrived and would keep playing long after he left. He thought of the witch, crouched over the water, drinking the echo of the bells like it was a rare wine. Somewhere out there, she was probably still listening, or maybe she was the one humming now, hidden under the frog song and night wind, keeping her promise. A long breath slipped out of him, and he realized how long he'd been holding it. His music was his again, but not entirely. It belonged to the swamp now, too tangled in its roots and coiled in the mud. Maybe that was the trade he'd made without saying it aloud. Maybe that was fair. The moon hung low, a crooked smile on an old face, and Silas smiled back. He played until the mist curled up from the water and his fingers ached, and when he finally stopped, the frogs carried the last notes for him. The swamp had its song now, and the bells would go hungry tonight. The frogs are singing again. The swamp has its song, and the bells, for now, are quiet. But the witch still listens, and the music Silas left behind hums beneath the roots, waiting for the next fool who thinks they can play without consequences. You've been listening to Tongue of the Serpent, written and created by Loveday Funk. Wilson Revell is the voice of Lucien Devereaux. Garrett Broom is the voice of Silas Piper, and Miranda Funk is the voice of the Swamp Witch. If this story found its way into your dreams, share it so the song doesn't stop with you.